Welcome back, everyone, to Bearing the Light, a resource for all things Italian esoterica, folk religion, and Western esotericism. I am your host, Salvatore, and tonight we discuss the cult of the souls in Naples, the nature of purgatory, Dante and the Divine Comedy, and the Anima Sola. I want to start off with a quote from Dante, from his Divine Comedy: "The path to paradise begins in hell." This is a very deep, esoteric quote from one of the greatest poets of all time. He was born in 1265 in Florence, Italy, and his work, his best known works, is the Divine Comedy, otherwise known as the Inferno. Which inspired countless other influential figures such as Boccaccio, Machiavelli, John Milton, William Blake, and many more. Dante gives us a deep insight into what hell is, or Hades, as it is also called, the underworld, what the underworld looks like, whether you call it hell or the underworld, from the 13th century. And it has a Christian framework with Kabbalistic undertones and pagan elements. But I digress from that, and we'll put that into, as I've said, another future episode. I really just wanted to focus on purgatory, or as it's called officially, purgatorio, which is the second part of the Divine Comedy. Like Christ, Dante descends into hell and rises out of it. However, he didn't die to go there. He first speaks with the mago poeto, Virgil. Virgil, the Roman poet that is, was seen as a magician around the 12th or 14th century, and you can see some of that element coming into this story. It's very mystical how Dante meets him, and he's in the woods and he opens this portal and they step into hell. There's many legends regarding Virgil. One of them is that he and the Cumaean Sibyl were said to predict the birth of Christ. He's like a Solomon figure. He's actually found in Dr. Stephen Skinner's Techniques of Greco-Egyptian Magic. There's a wonderful image of him on page 234, where he actually breaks open this jar, releasing the 72 spirits, just like King Solomon does it in much of the Grimoire literature. Very interesting. But what is purgatory? And why do we as souls go there after death? Purgatory is defined differently within the context of Christianity, the totality of Christianity, I should say. It is essentially the place after death where souls go before they board Charon's boat across the river Styx, or sometimes the river Acheron. Charon is mentioned as a ferryman starting at Canto 3, line 94 of the Divine Comedy, if you want to check it out. And it describes a demon with eyes like embers on line 109. So we kind of get this imagery of what he looks like. Here we find a continuation of that Greco-Roman tradition carrying into Christianity. When I was a kid, I can remember, just as a short story, coins being placed in the eyes of the deceased in their coffin, typically by women, and the women of the family, the matriarchs of the family, and they would offer prayers to the individual, and they were supposed to help them, guide them to find the skeleton man or the boatman. This was never done in front of the priest, and before the priest would walk in, the family would hide the coins under their head or in their mouth sometimes. And this was just part of the folk tradition. Obviously, it was heretical. That's why they didn't want the priest to know. But it's my grandfather used to joke. My nonno, he used to joke that the skeleton man, with inflation, he needed some more coins. 2 quarters weren't enough. So I find that interesting that belief even carries into the modern day. Origin of Alexandria, who lived between 185 and 253 AD, also known as Origen Adamantius, was an early Christian scholar who gave an early insight into the Christian idea of hell. And now I want to read an excerpt from the Christian Study Library on Origin, Section C on Hell. And I'm going to post all these links in the description too. So you can go and reference everything I've spoken about in this video today, this talk today. In Section C about hell, it says, in Origen's theology, there is little room for the genuine Christian view of judgment, sin, and forgiveness. Hell is not everlasting punishment. It seems more like purgatory. Origen stated that at death, none is sinless and fit for the presence of divine holiness and love. Therefore, there will be a purging fire, purifying the souls of all dross. Hell is the fire of despair which burns our conscience when we are separated from God. But those lost in sin, life is literally hell on earth. And there is hell after death waiting for them too. But the punishment they receive there is not retribution for their crimes. It is a remedy for their sickness. However unpleasant it is, the divine punishment is intended for the soul's good. Eventually, the soul will be cleansed and the punishment will end. However, since the soul's freedom is never cancelled out, there is still a possibility that the whole process will start over again. This teaching is partly the reason why he was later condemned as a heretic. And again, you can find that on the Christian Study Library, which again I will post in the description below. This is really interesting because here we have the idea that earth can be hell for those lost in sin. It's a state of mind. Hell here is a state of mind, really. And therefore we can live in hell here, even without death. But what is sin? Sin has been defined differently, and to make it more confusing in the Gospel of Mary, it states in chapter 4, the Savior said, there is no sin, but it is you who make sin, when you do the things that are like the nature of adultery, which is called sin. Sin here becomes very subjective. In my understanding of the text, those things that are likened to theft, hurting another, taking from another, disrespecting another, or any other way you could define adultery in a broad context is sin. These transgressions then can lead to being trapped in purgatory. It's a mental place. It's the Hermetic principle of mind, of mentalism. We have the ability to create what we want, our own reality, right here, right now, at any moment. Purgatory is the realm of the Anima Sola as well. The Anima Sola, or the lonely soul, is depicted as a woman in flames with chains, reaching towards heaven. However, other variable depictions do occur. There have been many interpretations of the Anima Sola and her veneration, and the veneration of souls in purgatory in general is very popular in southern Italy, Spain, and in Latin America. The Anima Sola is associated with Our Lady of Mount Carmel, who is believed to have promised release from purgatory to all who wear the brown scapular and is treated as a folk saint. She's typically depicted giving her breast milk to the souls in purgatory, and this is the refresco. This is the refreshment, the little relief that they can get. With prayer and offering, you can guide the souls out of purgatory, or sometimes it's just giving them, with the breast milk, that little drink or that relief. Not necessarily release sometimes. And this is exchange for helping them free themselves from the suffering, or like I said, giving them that little break. And doing this, they will give you something back in return. It's not a pact that you're making with somebody who is dead, but more of an honorable agreement. It's more like a favor. An ongoing favor. sometimes as well. As I spoke earlier on the words of origin, hell is on earth for those who live in sin. But let's break this down into contemporary terms and make this more practical in a modern context in regards to the Anima Sola for just a moment. Purgatory is considered the first layer of hell, which may be experienced now while alive. We put ourselves there. They're our own suffering that we create. You can view life as beautiful or dreadful. Your life is great or terrible. The choice is yours. This choice of yours is based on your attitude, your philosophy, in which you paint the world around you, so to speak. You manifest and project your inner turmoil or joys outward into the physical world. Purgatory is a state of mind and an actual place that we can choose to step into or out of. The Anima Sola then is all of us, reaching for the exit, having realized there is an out. But we only get out through prayer and our meditation on how and why we got there and what we need to do to live a better life. To live in peace and closer to God is to be closer and at one with the Logos. But what is God as Logos? What is this and what does it mean? What does the Logos mean? The Logos is the universal divine logic or reason. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus appears to be the first to have used the word Logos to refer to a rational divine intelligence, which today is sometimes referred to in scientific discourse as the mind of God. You can find that definition from pbs.org. Faith and reason. To put it clearly, to be one with the Logos, which I am highly condensing here, I'll make another video about this, is to be one with sound philosophical thought and reason, to rise above the animal instincts and draw emotion into a more refined and disciplined space, and to become a more refined and disciplined individual, spiritually, mentally, physically. To discipline the mind and emotion for the greater good of humanity and yourself. This is how we may be freed from purgatory. Hell represents the animal within, the beast. And heaven is your perfected state, becoming one with Logos, and realizing your inner Christ Sophia. This is our inner Lucifer before the fall. Earth is where we learn to balance the two. It's not about good or bad, it's about balance. When we remove ourselves from philosophical reason and logic, this is a removal from God, the divine intelligence. And we become the adversary to the universal logic, the Satan, the adversary to logic and reason. Now, with this foundation, I want to get into the cult of souls at Naples. What we just discussed will really help as a primer in understanding this tradition. Necromancy has a long-standing history not only in Italy but in the ancient world. Greek and Roman necromancy by Daniel Ogden is a great source for understanding this. We also find necromancy in the Medici library in the Elucidarium Artis Necromantiae, which the famed Heptameron grimoire is influenced by or based on. Even today, among the Italian diaspora, it's common to find a shrine to ancestors with pictures and heirlooms on it, and to have dreams of deceased relatives, which may relate messages about life. My nonna would tell me how she would have dreams of her father in his crypt, and that he would get out and walk towards her, and he would reveal to her who would die next or other future events that would happen. Culturally, if you use the term necromancy in the diaspora, nobody's going to say it's necromancy, just because there's a lot of practices that have to do with the dead that are just part of the culture. It's not seen as something separate. It's not even seen as something that's magical necessarily. It just is, which I think is very difficult for a lot of people to understand, how there's really no terms for a lot of these things. It's just what the diaspora might do. It's just a cultural thing. It's so integral. And a lot of the time, you'll find somebody in the diaspora saying, oh, this is Christian. But to a lot of people, they're going to say that's definitely not Christian. It's not a part of Christian doctrine. But to the people, it's, whether in Italy or in the diaspora, in America or abroad, they're not exactly wrong, because these are localized, popular forms of Christianity that fall outside the Christian doctrine, or the Catholic doctrine, especially in Italy. These are practices that were indigenous, that are still indigenous, and they're non-Christian practices, but they became fused with Christianity over time. However, I will say, even the Apostles' Creed itself does say Christ descended into hell for 3 days and rose again. Most churches now that at least I've experienced, have taken that line out of the Apostles' Creed, which I find so interesting. I had a priest tell me that it's because people don't understand it, which I definitely have issues with that, because I think people should understand what they're saying and reading, especially in religion. Really, any type of sacred text or poetic text, I think people should have a sense of what they're reading, so that they can really make it applicable to their own life. But just in that line alone, Christ descended into hell for 3 days and rose again. At the Fontanelle Cemetery in Naples, you can truly experience a city of the dead. Closed by the Archbishop in 1969 and not reopened again until 2010, I think this really speaks to the power of this place. In the book The Serpent Coiled in Naples by Marius, I'm not going to try his last name, forgive me, in the section called Old Bones, it has some really good insights into the conflict between Christianity and the folk religion, this folk religious practices of the place, and of the people, of the Anima Pezzentelle cult. To add more history to the Fontanelle site, in 1656 to 1658, the Black Death or the bubonic plague devastated Naples, killing roughly half the city's inhabitants. Of the estimated 150,000 dead, many were hastily buried in pits or existing tufa caves without markers. In 1837, victims of the cholera epidemic in Naples were buried in the mass graves around the city, including the Fontanelle Cemetery. In 1940 to 1944, a number of the tufa caves used as burial grounds served as bomb shelters during World War II, giving new reasons for the living to pray to the souls in purgatory, who were represented by the bones buried there. You can find all this at wrldrels.org. Again, I'll post that in the description. As we can see here by a brief timeline of events, living and dead coexisted in unique ways at this site historically, which established the cult. Ancestors are an integral part of Italian culture, as I've already stated, and visiting graves, making offerings to the dead, and performing traditional wailing to the departed souls is also very common. A once-a-year pilgrimage to cemeteries is sometimes mandatory in families to honor the dead. To not do so is considered disrespectful and may warrant punishment from the ancestors, like angering a nonna in life for not calling her once in a while. Yes, I am very serious here. Unfortunately, the Catholic Church views such practices as heretical. Even a cornicello or a prayer to the Madonna are also heretical sometimes in many churches in the United States. I'm speaking from experience here because I have experienced it, or I've seen somebody go through kind of like a scolding for this. Over the years, people have returned to the Fontanelle Cemetery, bringing offerings and prayers to the dead. These skulls are seen as a type of folk saint. as they bestow miracles. Heads from the Neolithic until the modern day are seen in many cultures to contain the soul. Study the halo around the heads of saints and the holy guardian angel. Also in the myth of Malta and Garofone, the Giganti, or Mata seizes Garofone's head. In the Afro-Cuban religion of Santeria, it is common to say an Orisha has claimed your head. This is to mean they are watching over you as their child. There are also 3 skulls in particular that receive special veneration. These are Lucia, the Virgin Bride, who rests at the Hypogeum at the Santa Maria del Purgatorio ad Arco, the Donna Concetta, and Il Capitano, the Captain, which are both at the Fontanelle Cemetery, who are treated like the relics of saints in that they are considered community property and cannot be adopted by an individual. Captain kind of reminds me of Baron Samedi a little bit, a lowest spirit of the dead within the voodoo religion and culture. Other skulls, though, can be adopted as personal folk saints. Sometimes these souls connected to the skulls appear in dreams, or people feel called to a particular set of bones. Wishes are requested of the skulls in exchange for their care, and over time legends have sprung up surrounding those who are particularly benevolent. As a token of thanks, the guardian houses a skull in a homemade wooden box, which line the ossuary, engraved with the soul's name and the date the wish was granted. The possibility for souls to deliver wishes is coupled with the idea that they have, for millennia, served as a mortal reminder of the futility of vanity and the accumulation of unnecessary objects, as depicted in the Memento Mori mosaics found at Pompeii. This is also very interesting because you find in the medieval grimoires. You also find it in African religion. You find it in Afro-Caribbean and Afro-American religion in Brazil and folk religions in Kimbanda, Umbanda, and many, many more. An object called the Nganga, or you have Solomon's vessel, which is very similar to these spirit houses, or these places where the spirit lives, or the spirit is contained. It's where you can feed them and communicate with them. Very, very similar ideas. Tokens of gratitude called an ex voto are also very common. These are very ancient, and similar examples date back to the temples of Asclepius and Diana Nemarensis. Images made of clay or metal are hung next to the Madonna or the saint as a reminder of the body part that they healed, or some other sympathetic visual representation in relation to the petition fulfilled. You can find these in Italy almost everywhere, at every church, just about, like big cathedrals, especially more so outside the cities. And you can find walls of these metal, like arms and legs and things. Sometimes even pictures, sometimes even paintings. Sometimes people even paint certain things as ex voto, as like a thank you to the healing. Sometimes you even find money actually tied with ribbons around the Madonna or the saint or something like that as well. Within the cult, the relationship between living and anonymous dead must still remain reciprocal, but without the possibility of releasing a soul from purgatory. The living pray for refresco, for the unknown souls. Frisco is thought to be a temporary relief from the fires of purgatory, like a cool drink on a hot day. The concept was illustrated in the image of the Madonna of Graces, a popular image of the Virgin Mary expelling breast milk into purgatory. Though some examples still exist, the image was successfully diminished by the Church during the Counter-Reformation due to its sensuality associated with popular but heretical views on purgatory. Neapolitan followers of the cult of the dead are often thought to come with gifts for their skulls on Mondays, particularly at the Fontanelle Cemetery. While this may have been true in the past, when the cult was more active, contemporary evidence of the cult of the dead appears to show up sporadically. Monday is a day connected to the moon and it also shows up in connection with chthonic spirits. In the Grand Grimoire, with the spirit Lucifuge, he's supposed to be the prime minister of hell. He responds to the conjurer saying, "Leave me to my rest. I will conjure up the nearest treasure on conditions that thou dost set apart for me 1 coin on the first Monday of each month, and dost not call me often than once a week, to wit, between 10 at night and 2 in the morning." So we see a connection to Monday there. We also see Monday appear as a day specifically governed by Lucifer in the Grimoire of Pope Honorius, saying Monday, the conjuration takes place between 11 and 12 o'clock at night, between 3 and 4. Monday also pops up in Latin America as well, in Kimbanda as well. Monday is considered a powerful day. So Monday is very important, as we can see even here for the dead. Not saying that any of that is connected, just saying that, just drawing some other parallels here. But what does this all mean? That's what I want to get to now. What does it all mean? This is a lot of information that I condensed into this episode, which I can create many episodes from, because there's so much to unpack here. But I want to conclude with this. Before embarking on any spiritual journey, or really any journey in general, we have to understand our history before we can make educated decisions about our future. Research your lineage, your ancestors, even if you don't like them. You may find things that might surprise you. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, and the dead truly know all. They are older than us, and we are truly all born from death, and will go back to death. Life lasts for us humans for about a century, which is nothing compared to thousands of years of ancestors who have come before you. You are your ancestors, whether you like it or not. This is the hard truth, and to find your personal truth, we need to examine this within ourselves. Connect with ancestors, living or dead, first before any journey, to find a greater purpose in what you're doing or want to do. If nothing else, ask for this in dreams. Maybe even try to connect with a family member that's still alive or long dead in a spiritual way, this way, and just see where it leads. Think of it this way. Your ancestors of time immemorial are like an army fighting for you, and you are a living representative of them. Let them guide you and fight for you, but listening is important. They are not physical, so you need to be observant of signs and dreams, gut feelings, and other phenomenon where they may be trying to communicate things on a very subtle level of your collective reality you share with them. Another direct way to contact an ancestor is to set up a shrine for them as you would a saint, with a picture and things that they liked in life, such as foods, mementos, and perfumes, with a votive candle. This creates a home for them and a beacon to know where to stay and to be cared for. No need for anything elaborate, because they are already there to fight for you and are guiding you, so building that connection will only strengthen them. Do as they do with the Fontanelle Cemetery. Make a little house for them, make a little shrine, and connect with them that way. The earth is our physical home, where we are born, live, and die. We live alongside death every day. Thus, we must embrace it, not as an end, but as a beginning to the cosmic mystery, to become one with the Logos. And in the words of Mark Twain from Innocents Abroad, Chapter 8, when he asked the Capuchin monk about the vast array of bones in these cemeteries, the monk replied, "We must all lie here at last." And we must all lie here at last, whether in one of those cathedrals, or right here at a cemetery down the street, or wherever your family is. We're not going to leave the earth. We're here, and we're here to stay. At least in the flesh. Thanks for listening to another episode of Bearing the Light with your host, me, Salvatore. And remember to always keep questioning, look for the existential truth, and always be the bearer of light in your own reality. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, and share it. I'm doing my best to get better at creating these episodes, and I hope to come out with an episode at least once a month. I try to do as much research as I can and really condense everything I can with these very large topics. And I would love if you had any suggestions. You could put them in the comments below. And I really encourage educated discussion in the chat as always. And like I said, any suggestions for future episode. But until that time, I'm going to say goodbye for now.